We had a surprise between the Sixers and the Hawks. If you're a gambler, you know that Philadelphia was a 4.5-point home favorite in that game. And when news came down that Joel Embiid was going to play, and it was up in the air whether Embiid was going to play, you assumed the position that certainly the Sixers, if Embiid was halfway decent, would have won that game. Now, I don't know if you saw it or not. It was an early start, especially if you're out west. But hey, sleep is for the weak. Come on, man. I watched, and it was not about Joel Embiid. It was about Trae Young. The first half, you can win a game in the first half. If you build up a big enough lead, you just have to hang around in the second half, and just show up occasionally, and you can win the game. And that's what happened here. Trae Young, 25 of his 35 points in the first half as the Hawks jumped out to a 26-point lead and then held on by their fingernails to beat the Sixers 128-124. The better story in this one in the losing locker room, as it often is. So let us discuss the question. Who do you blame? We're going to play the blame game. Who do you blame for the Sixers' loss against the Hawks? A game that was lost in the first half. So my observations, you've got malpractice, matador, and doorstep. And we will combine all of these things together. We're going to make some goulash is what we're going to make. Now, number one. The Sixers had a small speed bump against the Wizards. Philadelphia won the series even with Joel Embiid dinged up at the end. It was a bowl of cherries. Carefree innocence, right? So you figured the rainbows and the lollipops were likely going to continue into the second round. After all, Atlanta, they're not supposed to be here. They played the Knicks, and the Knicks are a joke, and everyone's all excited because they got in and they play in the Mecca and all that. But Atlanta really is interlopers in the second round of the playoffs, considering where that franchise has been in recent years, and not anymore. Now the Sixers have gotten the full Doc Rivers experience. I hope you enjoyed that. This game against the Hawks was vintage Doc. It was coaching malpractice is what it was. Doc Rivers went AWOL at the start of that game. Now, we debate how much coaching matters, and I don't think coaching matters all that much in the NBA, with rare and appropriate exceptions. And this would be a rare and appropriate exception. I saw this one coming up close and personal when Glenn Rivers was with the Clippers. The infamous downward spiral. It's like if he did yoga, it would only be the downward dog. That would be it. Now, secondly, why does Doc Rivers get the lion's share of the blame for this game? He said he didn't play, he didn't score a point, he didn't give up any points, he was just on the sidelines, he was just screaming and shouting and doing interviews. Well, strategy set Philadelphia up for defeat. Let me explain. I'm going to explain this to you like you're 5 years old. 5 years old, okay? So the 76ers, the favored team, the team with the better overall talent, they came out of the starting blocks with Danny Green matched up, straight up, on Trae Young. That's coaching, right? All right, Danny, why don't you go against Trae Young? That's the stuff coaches talk about all the time. Who are we going to match up with? And Doc Rivers and the people around Doc Rivers decided to put Danny Green, no one's defensive stopper, on Trae Young. And what happened, if you saw the game, you know this, in the first half, it was the old-fashioned matador defensive strategy. Danny Green was out there. He was waving a red flag at the bull during the bullfight. And as you may imagine, Trae Young rampaging the Philadelphia defense with reckless abandon. Ole, 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 ole. That was Trae Young as he ran to the basket, right? The plan was bold for Doc Rivers, and it backfired just as boldly. Right? Trae Young, in the first half of this game, absolutely pantsed Doc Rivers and Danny Green, and anyone that was watching, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Trae Young had 25 points on 8 of 13 from the floor. 61%. 61%. It was the varsity versus the junior varsity. And then only after falling behind by as many as 26 points that the Sixers decide, well, maybe this isn't working out, this old Danny Green defensive strategy. So let's switch things up. And in the second half, they did switch things up. And Trae Young, against better defensive players, he took 10 shots. He only made 3 of them. 0 for 4 from three-point range, only had 10 points. But the game was already out of hand by the time that move was made. And this is the argument against Doc Rivers when he was with the Clippers, and it's the same argument based on what happened here with Philadelphia. He is not proactive, he is reactive, reactionary coaching. All right? You're not the one dictating what's going on. You're the one reacting to what's going on, and that's a bad job by him. Now, Doc also had his wine game going pretty well. He was politicking with the media, saying that Trae Young was getting the benefit of the calls. That the referees were in the back pocket of Trae Young, and that he was the one initiating most of the contact on plays where the Sixers were called for fouls. That was Doc's argument, attempting to get help from the officials in future games. We'll see if it works out that way or not, whether it's more important for Philadelphia to win in advance or it is for the Atlanta Hawks to win in advance. Now, the final point here. If you read the comments coming out of the 76ers locker room, you see the quotes, they all have a common theme. You want to take a guess what that theme is? Let me give you some of the words of wisdom coming out of the Philadelphia side, the losers' locker room. Tobias Harris, he indicated that the 76ers had a lack of urgency. Kind of obvious. Ben Simmons pointed out that Philadelphia has to start games better. What do these things all have in common? They fall at the doorstep of Doc Rivers. Kids, can you say poorly coached NBA team? I knew you could. Yeah, that's the ticket. That is the ticket. We saw the difference between a Doc coach team and not having Doc coach with the Clippers in a Game 7. Now, I'm not a big Ty Lue fan. I'm not a big Ty Lue believer, but that Clipper team in Game 7 was relaxed. They were unflustered by the pressure of what it would have happened had they lost that Game 7 against Dallas, and they played with poise. They did. And when Dallas took a 5-point lead in the third quarter, a Doc Rivers coach team would have collapsed. That didn't happen here. The Clippers stormed back. They went blitzkrieg and had a massive run, outscored Dallas, and took a 19-point lead, outscored them by 24 points. They didn't stumble. You know who stumbled out of the starting block? That would be Philadelphia. And to lose a game where Joel Embiid plays and injured, and you debate whether he was going to play or not, and played well. Embiid had 39 points and 9 rebounds, and the Sixers still lost home court. That is a roundhouse kick right to the shin. A roundhouse kick to the shin. Philadelphia never led after the 7:43 mark of the first quarter. Now, some are trying to spin this and say, well, but it was close. And it was. They got within 3 points of a tie in the final minute. But it was one of those things like, they're going to get close, but they're not actually going to win it, right? I didn't think they were actually going to win it. Atlanta made some foul shots in the final seconds, and that was it. Now, we assume Doc Rivers will not make the same mistake again in Game 2, but you can never be sure with Danny Green one-on-one matched up against Trae Young. So now the chess move goes over to the Hawks. They've got to figure out a way to get Trae Young's engine going against likely Ben Simmons, but Matisse Thybulle also is a very good defensive player for Philadelphia, and he's a backup. But those two guys will likely be matched up in this Game 2 a couple days from now against the Atlanta Hawks' Trae Young. So we'll keep an eye on that.